Great morning, everybody. It's so great to see you here on our BMG. A lot of you are new, and it's super thrilling to have you. The only thing that I ask is that if you guys have questions, if you have stories, feedback, thoughts, please interject them. This is a mastermind group, so we learn from other people. I'm going to do a quick presentation, and then we're just going to use that as our material for today. But again, your thought, your question, your idea can help somebody else. So I highly recommend that you interject whenever. All right. This is a growth opportunity for us all. Today's topic is on creating habits. Again, everybody should have received a PDF. If you can print that or just pull it up really quickly, we will reference that several times today. But before we dive in, I want to share a story with you. You guys know I love my stories. So during World War I, the military started recruiting soldiers. And when they recruited these soldiers, they determined, and this is the United States specifically, they determined that there was a major problem in the hygiene. Specifically, the soldiers had rotting teeth. All of them had rotting teeth. And so what they determined was that prior to the war, we had several economic surges. So there was a lot more wealth in the economy. What happened as a result of that is people were buying more products that were luxury items, which in turn was predominantly sugary treats. And so because of the economic rise and the mass consumption of goods that weren't necessities, but more luxuries, people's teeth started to rot. And this became a big problem. And so in order to make this shift, the government had to devise a specific way to get people to implement this new habit so that everybody's teeth weren't rotting. And so there are three little parts to this specific story. And I just want you to keep this in mind. One of them is a cue. Now, when we say a cue, there's a pain point. Rotting teeth can be a very bad problem. The second part to that is creating a routine, which at first, everybody knows, once you start a routine, very awkward. You've got to get into the habit, but once you start doing it, it feels good. And then the final part is the reward. So here's a really quick example here. Another approach before they started brushing their teeth was the government said, you know what, guys, we need to start actually watching our diet more. And so when people shifted to that dietary side, they started to implement smoothies. And the interesting thing is, when people wanted to start this path of having smoothies, it was really awkward at first. But because the first day you had to learn the measurements, you had to learn the recipe, you had to go find your blender, you had to pull all these things together for the very first time. But the cue, the pain point, was high. And so once you did the first day of the smoothies and then went to the second day, it became easier. And by the end of the week, that routine was second nature. You didn't have to think about it. You already had your measurements down. You had your recipe down. You just push the button and it's there. The reward was much higher. Why? You're not craving sugar throughout the day by getting that first meal in. It's healthy, it's quick, easy to implement, right? But it didn't solve the problem overall. So the government went on and started to market toothbrushes, toothpaste, everything that was required to clean their teeth. So I want you guys to think about this when we're going through this habit creating exercise, because now here's the deal. We only have to invest 30 seconds, a minute, twice a day to brush our teeth. And it's a low entry point, but the reward is extremely high. Any habit that you implement in your life is going to hold a similar fashion. It always starts with very small baby steps, easily implementable. And then over time, it becomes so second nature to you, you don't even have to think about it anymore. You can do this with virtually any habit throughout your life. So I'm going to share my screen with you guys. Again, if you have this PDF, go ahead and pull it up. It's your tool. This is for you. But I would love everybody to jot down or at least think about one habit that you would like to incorporate into your routine, whether that's health, personal development, whatever it is, something you know will take you to the next level, or one habit that you know you need to stop It is not helping you get to your goals. And so I'm going to pause for just a quick minute. I want everybody to really put this down because we are going to use this. So everybody get one habit you'd like to implement or one habit you would like to stop. As soon as you get it down, just give me a thumbs up. Awesome. We got majority of everybody. So again, if you would like to share this, more than welcome to. If not, totally fine. But before we dive into that part, I want to share the 3 keys to changing this habit. Number 1 is outcome. You have to be certain and clear on your outcomes. So often we have these vague outcomes that we can't ever hit it. How do you know? If, for example, I said, I want to meditate more. That's the habit that I want to incorporate. Well, it's so vague. What does that mean? You guys have heard me use the SMART acronym a ton. So I wanted to give you a different acronym for today. So this one is the Clear acronym. Challenging, limited, emotional, appropriate, and refinable. Challenging. This goal should scare you. Here's the deal. If you are not failing on a daily basis, that's a clear indication your goals are too low. You should be scared of your goals. These should intimidate you. You should be scared of failure. But you know what? When you show up and you challenge yourself, the confidence level rises once you complete these challenges. Limited. You need a time frame. Again, so often we go out and say, hey, I'm going to get this done or I'm going to do that, but we don't put any time frame on it. So there's no pressure, there's no accountability, there's no sight. We don't know where we're going. You have to have a time frame. Pick a day. Pick a day, put it on your calendar and make that commitment. Emotional. Really what we're saying here is, why is this important to you? Why is this habit or goal relevant to you, right? Often we get into these positions of exterior motives that influence what we're actually doing. And so when we talk about the emotional tie, I love this chart called the 5 whys. I'd be happy to share this with anybody. I know Bob has this, but the 5 whys is super powerful. You take whatever you're contemplating and you put it at the starting point, and then you ask yourself, why is that important? Okay, great. Why is that important? And you keep going until you get to the actual root. And that's where your power is. Appropriate. Make sure that this is in line with your big picture goals. Now, of course, you must be very clear on what those big picture goals are first. If you are not, how can you know if it's an appropriate goal? But when you're very clear on those big picture goals, you will very easily know, is this action or habit contributing to this goal, or is it detracting from this goal? Refinable. Specificity is crucial. We must have this element of specificity if we are going to hit any target. However, there's so much in life that's out of our control. We're always learning. We're finding new opportunities. We're opening new doors. So as specificity is very important, you also need to incorporate agility. A great example of this, COVID. How many people's businesses or lives changed? They may have had a big picture goal, and that's fantastic. But when COVID came, it changed the structure. If you used to do meetings face-to-face, you may have been forced to do them virtually. This is an opportunity, but you have to have that agility and be able to refine your goal so over time, you can actually hit the mark. So clear, challenging, limited, emotional, appropriate, and refinable. Does anybody have any questions on this before we go to the next part? Okay, great. So 2 triggers. If we were in a car together right now and we pulled up to a red light, what would we do? We'd stop, right? That is a visual trigger. We see something and it triggers or elicits a response. The cool thing is we can strategically use triggers throughout our day in life, personally and professionally, to get tremendous results. Fascinating. I love this system. So when we break this down to the reticular activating system, what we're really specifically focusing on is sight, sound, and touch, visual, auditory, kinesthetic. The reason for this is because the reticular activating system, it's a small strand in the back of your neck. This is how we process this information. The smell and taste are actually wired to the prefrontal cortex, which is an emotional response. So if you want the long-term effects, you want to focus on these three areas: sight, sound, touch. So here's another example, and you guys may have read this in the book, but I started working with this individual and he wanted to go on this weight loss journey. And he told me his routine, very simple. In the morning, he drank coffee, ate a donut. We set up a visual trigger. So the box of donuts was directly next to the coffee maker. The challenge, we started to put an apple on top of the box of donuts. So now every morning when he went to make his coffee, not only would he have to physically move the apple to get to the donuts, but he was reminded every day, oh, that's right, I'm on this health journey. And so again, the cue was the pain point of the weight. The routine was changing the diet, the intake from the donut to apple, and then the reward at the back end. And that again goes back to that emotional tie-in. So I'm curious if anybody at this point wants to share what your habit is. And then the second part to that, after we share the habit, what is one of these triggers that you could use for that? So does anybody want to share their habit really quickly? Okay, we'll come back to this when we open it up to the group. Oh, okay, go ahead, Andrea. I'm sorry, I can't see everybody. So if somebody raised their hand, I missed it. Andrea?
I had to find my mute button. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, sorry. I moved recently, and the thing I've gotten out of the habit of that I need to reestablish in an even stronger form is actual schedule setting, calendar setting, so that I actually reach all those goals. So that's my new habit pattern I want to establish, is that calendar schedule setting. And the Apple idea triggered for me, what can I do before the week starts that triggers me to do that, right?
Absolutely.
And make it solid.
So do you have one of these three that's applicable here? And this is, it's really interesting that we're talking about this. Steve and I literally talked about this on Sunday. And I'll give you a little nugget here. So Steve was telling me, and I do this exact same thing. I know Ashley does this too, but do you guys ever do this where you have an email or a text or something like that, and you know you need to respond to it? So it's not the right setting or time at that moment. So what you do is you just leave it unopened, and that is your visual trigger, right? So Andrea, I'm curious, in terms of the scheduling, what is a visual, auditory, or kinesthetic trigger that you could set up at the beginning of the week to help incorporate this for your calendar?
I don't know. I'm open to suggestion.
Does anybody have a suggestion here?
Calendar, and I'd lay it out. And now I have a new home and I don't have a calendar, so I'm like, ah.
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind is perhaps if you got a calendar to put on the wall or on a table surface somewhere, that you are, no questions about it, you're going to see this within the first 10 or 20 minutes of your day.
Figuring out where to place it. So acquire a calendar and figuring out where to place it. Back where I used to live, I would literally just play. I never used the actual calendar, but I had a calendar that I would place on my keyboard, and that was my visual trigger. Oh, go set your calendar, your Google Calendar, right?
Yeah. Do you have a similar workstation right now?
Pardon?
Do you have a workstation like that in your new home too?
It's in process. I don't know if you can tell, but the walls and everything's kind of bare. And I'm in this little desk. I'm used to having everything up, and it's all in transition. And I'm trying to just get the schedule set, because I know if I get the schedule set, everything else will fall in line. So yeah, I maybe just sitting it here or someplace, maybe by the coffee maker. Actually, that might be a way down, because I'll see the coffee maker first thing in the morning when I get up there. Got it. Coffee maker, calendar. Thank you.
Yeah, glad to help.
And so that would be a visual trigger, right? Another example,
Mhm.
Andrea, is you could set up an auditory trigger, which would be simply an alarm on your phone and says, hey, Monday this time, got to get the scheduling down.
Got it.
So we'll come back to
Actually,
this. Go ahead.
all I was going to say is actually for me, I would probably make it Sunday or Saturday because I like to start the week with it already in my head because I start pretty early in the morning on Mondays. Like my first appointment is like 6:30 a.m. So if I don't have it, then my day gets scrambled.
Right. And we'll come back to that when we open it up to the group. Thank you for sharing.
Yep.
Last part is tiny habits. So you guys have probably heard me use this Michael Lotito example many times before, but it's still one of my favorite ones. Michael Lotito, if you haven't heard of him, go ahead and Google him. He's in the Guinness Book of World Records. He ate 18 bicycles. He ate a Cessna plane. He ate jet skis, chandeliers, TVs, like all kinds of stuff. This is true story. And so when we talk about tiny habits, often what happens is when we think about Michael Lotito, right? If he were to physically eat a bicycle, he cannot swallow a bicycle. It's too large. So what did he do? He had to break. He pulled off the tires. He pulled off the chain. He pulled off the handlebars. He breaks up the metal. He melts down these little pieces so that they're palatable and manageable in bite sizes. That's what you have to do with your habits. You can't just start with the bicycle. Why? So many people see the bicycle, they see the big picture, the big goal, the big habit, and they are intimidated. It seems so insurmountable because it's large. But what you have to realize is we actually have more time than we know what to do with. How often do people just sit around on social media or watch TV or waste time when they could be using that for something else? So when we talk about the tiny habits, you have to break it down. You want to start with that big picture, have clarity on the bicycle or what that habit or goal looks like, and then break it down so small and refined that it's easy to implement. So the best way to think about this is what is within your control, and then what is one tiny action step that you could use or implement today? That's right. That's right, Andrea. How do you eat the elephant one bite at a time? 100%. So here's what I'm going to do, guys. I'm going to go ahead and pull away from the screen really quickly. And now we're going to open it up to the group. So the way that this works is if anybody would like to share what one of your habits that you want to start or stop is, and then we'll open it up to the group and see what people's thoughts or feedback is to help you create those triggers and the tiny habits. So who wants to jump in first?
I'll jump up.
All right, Miles, go for it.
Yeah. So it's funny you use the example of meditation because that is the habit that I'm trying to reestablish right now. It's something that I used to have in a pretty solid routine, but recently I haven't had it as much, and I want that presence back. So I think setting the goal to meditate 2 times per day, just for 10 minutes each, that's a little intimidating at first, that's a big jump to going from not meditating consistently to now I'm going to do this 20 minutes a day and 2 times. As for a cue that I can use, the visual suggestion that I gave to Andrea, that's what works really well for me. I used to have things like literally in front of my bed. So I would wake up and I would see all of these things on my wall. I don't have that right now. So the thought comes like, what if I put something like on my bedroom door or right next to the mirror in my bathroom? Because I get up, I open the door, feed my cat, and then I go and I brush my teeth. So those are 2 of the first things I see every morning. So if I have some sort of visual cue right there for me, maybe that'll do it.
I love that.
Other suggestions as well, though.
Yeah, and I'm going to open this up to the group, but one thing really quickly that I want to share to everybody is it's extremely important to learn your sensory acuities. What I mean by this is the sight, sound, touch. We don't operate on all 3. We do, but we have one predominant or maybe even 2 predominant sensory acuities that we respond best to. So what you mentioned, Miles, was a visual one, and that may be your best acuity, but also it might not be, right? So, often we hear people that grow up and they're like, oh, I'm a visual learner. And then there's an exercise you do and you find out that the visual learning is actually your lowest responding point. So it may have worked, but you could cut down so much time by having a better acuity that you're aware of. So by the way, if anybody wants to dive into the sensory acuity exercise, I've got a really simple exercise. Marlene and I have done this and it was amazing. You see the results right away. Anyway, does anybody have any thoughts for Miles here? Any triggers, anything that would help interject this meditation into your daily routine? I saw Bob and then Tammy. Tammy, he said ladies first.
Oh, thanks. So for me, when I'm trying to get into something, 20 minutes twice a day would probably be a bit too much. And so that might be the goal I want to get to, but I might start off with something else to get that success happening. So like maybe 10 minutes the first day. And if that was cool and easy, then I could do 20 minutes if I wanted to. But a lot of coaches say, just stick with exactly what you say and don't go, I give myself a little bit of leeway. If I like it, I'll go into the 20 and stop there. But that was one thing, just so you're not setting yourself up. And then for me, I would like to play the music, whatever it is that gets me into, like, I like spa music or nature music. And as soon as I'm playing that, it just like takes me there, or the ocean waves. And so even though I can get there, there's things that get me there. And so if you have stuff like that, that actually gets you there. And for some people, it's like heavy metal, or, that's a little bit different. That doesn't do it for me, but my husband loves it. Like, it makes him, it gets his energy, and he can calm into it. So you might find that what doesn't work for most people might work for you. So that's another thing to look at.
Thank you, Tammy. Great perspective. Bob?
Love that. Well, I just recently introduced this same habit into my life, meditating. Have been doing it for the past month, and it's been wonderful. Two things that I use as a trigger, is the time. I have a set time for it, 7 a.m. in the morning. That's it. That's when I know I'm going to be doing it. And when the alarm goes off, or when I have a buddy that helps me do this. So having a buddy also helps. But I just know that 7 o'clock is meditation time. I don't have to think about it. As soon as the clock goes to 7, or somebody calls me and says it's time to meditate, I know that that's the time to meditate. It's helped me tremendously. I know what time during the day I'm going to meditate. It's consistent. I don't have to think about it. Just like brushing my teeth. It's first thing in the morning, last thing at night. It's consistent. The other thing is, always for me, where I meditate is very important. And I create a nest, a place for me to meditate. So I know when I'm in that nest, it's meditation time. So it's kind of the feeling of this is the time for meditating, because it's the time I'm in it, and I'm in the place. That helps me.
Thank you both. So I love both of those triggers, because you mentioned the auditory, right? Tammy with the sounds, which is very responsive and receptive. And Bob, you use the sound and the kinesthetic, right? That environment is fascinating. So one little thing, Miles, and this may or may not help, but in terms of meditating, I love having a totem. That's a kinesthetic, right? So here's an example. This is one of my little totems, a little bodhisattva. And so I'll have this and I'll hold this in my hand. But the great thing is I can put this directly next to my phone, or even on top of my phone. So as soon as that alarm goes off in the morning, I'm forced to grab it. That's the kinesthetic. And as soon as I touch it, I know, okay, I turn the alarm off. Next step, got to go meditate. So any thoughts or feedback on that, Miles? And then I'd love to pass to somebody else.
Yeah. As far as a auditory trigger, nothing comes to mind immediately, but that is something that I want to play around with. The idea of having a nest, like Bob said, I really like that. That sounds like something I could get into, because there is a corner of my room that I could even kind of envision that for. And what you said about having a totem, I have Rudraka beads, which is a 108 count of Rudraka seeds that are used for meditation. And when I do meditate, I'm usually holding those. And so I never even put together for myself that I use that as a totem. but I think you just saying that kind of turned something on inside of my head.
I love it. Thank you. And,
Thank
and
you all.
again, you'll notice that everybody has a different response, right? So you may be able to create that kinesthetic, that environment, that nest, and that can be super powerful, but you can also incorporate the auditory or the visual. You know, I know Ashley's huge and Tammy mentioned this as well, but those ocean sounds, right? It can just trigger that emotional response. It's a happy place and you hear it and it just puts you right into that state. That's really what it's about is being able to shift your state of being at that point in time. And these triggers do that very rapidly. And that's why they're very powerful. Also, it helps you from having to remember a ton of stuff because you just set your trigger up. You think about it, you set the trigger up and it's there. You go to it when you need it. Thank you guys so much. So who's next? Who wants to share a habit that they want to incorporate or stop? Go ahead, Bob.
I mean, if nobody else is going to go, I'll definitely go because this is one that I just started yesterday and it's the one that I want for the month of August. So this is perfect timing. And it's core training, strength training. Right. So, and the cue is getting out of the car. I noticed it gets a little bit more difficult. You guys won't realize that for many, many more years, but just getting out of the car is difficult. Also, when I'm in New York, it's going up the subway steps. Running up the subway steps is not what it used to be. And those are cues for me because I realize the difference and I don't like it and I don't want it anymore. And I know, and it's a challenge. It's a challenge to challenge against the body that inevitably is changing. And so that's my cue. I know I can do something against it. I don't have to accept it. I can slow it down. And core training to me is the thing that will do it. And so I went to the gym yesterday for the first time in 700 years. And I plan on making it a habit. I don't know if I'm going to. I don't know. I'm trying to think of all the things that I can think of that would kind of makes it hard because it's not here. I have to go to the gym. I don't know. I really no. I really want this to happen, and I have to be committed, and I want it to happen. And I'm going to tell you, I really want this to happen. One of my goals is Miles, the person that I talked about, wants to take me on one of these journeys, and it's a physical journey, and it's a journey to your limit, and I really want to do it. I really want to do it, and I can't do it now. Of course, I can't even get no. I can't. I'm in very good physical shape for my age, but I can't do that. I would love to be able to do that. I would love to be able to do that, and I think it just starts here. And I notice, yeah. I don't know. That's it.
I'm going to open this up to the group. I'm really fired up about this one because there's so many touch points here. But I'd love to hear what other people have to say first. So does anybody want to jump in and share their thoughts here? Andrea?
I think that's wonderful, a wonderful goal to have. And I'm going to tease you and correct you on one point. It doesn't have to be age. And I say that as a mom who's had 3 children. I really felt the core after. And so, but you're right, there's the trigger point, right? Anytime after something like that, you go to do something that you used to be able to do and you can't, and that's your trigger. But one of the things I was thinking is you have this thing you want to do. What if you paired a picture, a visual cue picture of that thing you want to do with something like crunches or sit-ups? So you have a visual cue of, oh, this is what I want to do. This is what I got to do to get there. The other thing that I found really helpful for me, and our lives are probably very, very different, but for me as a mom with 3 kiddos, my life gets pretty hectic. And I can't just go to a gym. And so one of the things I did was break up my meetings in the day and make myself go get a drink of water and do something like 25 sit-ups. And I couldn't even do 25 sit-ups when I started. I couldn't do a push-up when I started. glad to say I can do all of those now, and I'm still working on it. But when I first started, I couldn't even do a push-up, and I was like, oh my God. So I started with like just doing a push-up every time I did a break, right? Every time I did a break, which doesn't sound very much, but by the end of the day, if you did 20 breaks, you've done 20 push-ups, or however many sit-ups or crunches, or however you're working on your core, right? So that's one way that I would do it. And I'm a big into like what I call state setting. So something that emotionally gets me in the vibe. So if there's music from this goal that you want, or something that some kind of music or sound that you associate with that bigger thing that you want, use that as a trigger also to make yourself do the physical work to get there. So that's my basic input for the moment.
Love it. Thank you. I just saw Bob doing crunches with Rocky playing in the background when you said that. Anybody else want to share your thoughts or feedback here? Go ahead, Tammy.
This is one I'm working on myself. And so similar to Andrea, when I do take a break, it's about every hour, could I go to the bathroom, whatever. I actually will march and do high leg raises. So it does take me a lot longer to get to where I want to, but it gives you that, it works out your glutes, it works out your inner legs, your outer legs, it works out your stomach. So it starts to get some of that core. And then when that gets tiring, which it does, then I'll still do the walking toward it, but I'll do kickbacks. So I'm doing leg lifts backwards. And if I'm in the mode where I'll usually be, okay, I'm going to do some side lifts of the legs and things like that. So, and I have 2-pound dumbbells, which I haven't been using, but I'm going to be doing that. I know that's not much, but when you hold your arm out, it gets tiring, just your arm. So I haven't got to the upper body, and I'm doing a lot of speaking. I do hypnosis work, but there are some things that I have the self-hypnosis conversation of, I don't want to. And so I've been really rechanging that. I do want to. I don't want the pain that's coming, but so instead I focus on, like you, I focus on, I don't want the pain that's there now. And so this is going to help me get stronger. So the current pain will leave, and this burning pain will not be as much as it is currently. So those are the various things that I do.
Love the reframe.
Really like
Powerful stuff. So I also, Tammy, I just pictured you doing the high kicks with like a glass of water in your head, going to the bathroom. Not there yet, right? Almost there. But a thing I'll share a story with you really quickly, Bob. So Les Brown, you guys may or may not know of him. He's a motivational speaker. He started on a weight loss journey. And when he first started, he said, you know what? My goal is to do 150 crunches a day. He went to do it the first time and he could only do 2. And so what happened was he had to start in those incremental baby steps. So he started by having a goal of 10 per day. And he did that for a full week. And once he conquered 10 each day for a full week, then he raised that number and just progressively going in that ascent until you hit the goal of 150. It's just like brushing the teeth, right? Not everybody just started off brushing their teeth twice a day. We saw that with the World War I example. They had to start with the baby steps. And so another thing that's relevant to this that I was actually reading about this morning, which is fascinating to me, and I might not capture the point here, but we can relate this to global warming in a way, because at the end of the day, everybody on this call, whether you agree with global warming or not, we can see the trends that it's getting warmer and warmer on our planet, right? And so often what happens is we sit in this position where we say, okay, you know what? It's so far off that I don't need to do anything about it. Our grandkids they'll solve that problem. We don't need to worry about it. That's the same thing with what you're just saying, Bob, right? It's like you get to this place where, okay, look, I'm aging. We're all aging. Everybody on this call is aging. And as we grow and grow and grow, we can foresee a similar outcome like the global warming. At some point, our health will be compromised. So instead of waiting until a catastrophe or a crisis occurs, we start by implementing the baby steps now. And so a really big thing for you, Bob, is I would just tie it back to the first part and being super clear on your why. Why is this important to you? Not just the health capability or getting out of the car, but even further on, it helps you live a better life, right? You and Jay have more opportunities together. It goes on and on. So when you tie it to that emotional point and you have more depth there, then it's going to trigger these responses for you to get up and act. And then you create your own triggers, right? So another really simple example is you could theoretically put, let's say you just used a mat to do crunches. You could put that mat next to your door. So as soon as you woke up and walked out of the door, you see the mat there. And if you really wanted to take it a step further, you could put it directly in front of the door. So you actually physically have to move that mat to open the door. Then you're forced into action. So any other thoughts or questions before we go to somebody else? Or Bob, if you wanted to share anything from the feedback from everybody?
Oh, I just want to say thank you to everyone. And the thing that strikes me is what Andrea and Tammy said, and what you just said, Keegan, too, is I don't have to wait to go to the gym. Right. I can have it right here in taking a break, standing up, going to get the drink of water. I could do the high kicks. I could put the dumbbells not in the closet, but right here at my desk, so that when I'm done or whatever, I do it. Actually, oh gosh, look at, and I just folded them away. I have my bands here too. What, I got to just put them right here so that I use them all the time. You know how many years old these are? They're no longer, because now I'm going to put it right here. I really appreciate that. And the visual cues. So somebody said something, picture the exercise that you're going to do. I really love that. I really love that. And I know that I will always look at Keegan's Facebook pictures of him in the gym. That's definitely motivating. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Love it, guys. Love it. And that's another thing, again, that clarity on the end result. And so I've heard a lot of people say things like, I want to look like I did when I was 25, and they'll pull up a picture of them when they were 25, and that's their motivation. It doesn't need to be somebody else, right? But having that visual, that's a powerful trigger. Andrea said that. I love that. I've used this technique myself by simply carrying a picture in your wallet of something that you desire, or it's a reminder to not do something, right? So anyway, does anybody else have one that they want to share? A habit that you want to include or a habit that you would like to stop? Steve, Ash, Marlene, Carissa?
I'll share. A habit that I would like to implement is meal planning. So that would be more of like, probably not necessarily a daily thing, but a weekly thing. And so I have, it's kind of funny. I've like, this has been like a kind of pieces coming together. I started off with just like a scrap piece of paper. And it also started with like, I need groceries. Like I have nothing. So like, I'm not going to go blindly to the store and just like start throwing things in my cart. I mean, you could, but I don't think that would be very efficient. So then I was like, okay, well, let's start meal planning. It's not something I've ever really done consistently, but something that I obviously want to implement. And so I moved on from the scrap piece of paper. I was like, oh, I have this great notebook that I'm not using for anything. So I'm like, I'll use the notebook. And then I kind of thought, well, it'd be really cool to be able to look back on the weeks and see when we last ate something and like get it back into a rotation. You know what I mean? So we don't get sick of it. So I don't know if I'm going to figure out which day, ideally probably Saturday or Sunday, that I'll sit down and kind of evaluate what I have, what I need, and what we want to eat. Okay.
I love it. I love it. So meal prepping. Does anybody have any thoughts here that they'd like to share?
It can be a lifesaver. Speaking as a mom who's working and 3 kiddos, it's a lifesaver, and it can be really difficult, just like schedule setting to set up to start off with. It can feel overwhelming. But once you kind of get an idea and dig into it, you find that, at least for me, I found that it wasn't as difficult as I initially was making it. It felt like this giant elephant. And then when I really looked at it, I went, well, we actually eat this, 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 and this. Now, if I rotate these out, then I can put these other things in. But what it really did was make it so that my my kids are consistently fed, I'm consistently fed, which keeps those moods level and the energy level and all these, like there were all these benefits that happened out of just making the meal plan happen that I didn't necessarily think about to start off with. It just seemed like, oh, I gotta figure out meals for the whole week. And that felt overwhelming. But when I actually sat down to do it, it was really beneficial. So I would like really encourage that actually, and encourage the looking at the benefits you might not think about other than the fact that you don't have to shop every day and you know, that kind of thing, but like the long-term overarching benefits. Like for me, my kids are consistently fed, they're generally happy, right? Just as an example, and that really impacts how capable I am at work and how capable I am at redirecting them and so on and so forth. So for what it's worth. That emotional component, I guess, bringing it back to the habit setting that Keegan was talking about, thinking about that emotional part of it. Why is it relevant? Why is it important?
Well, that's fantastic, Andrea. And so I think that it starts back in that 3-part loop, the cue, the pain point of either spending money, eating out, or just, you know, scrambling to figure it out or whatever it is, finding that point, that pain point, that cue. And then the routine portion is testing it. Is it Saturday? Is it Sunday? Maybe you do it on Sunday and that becomes your meal prep day. And then the reward, like Andrea was saying, well, all of those health benefits, the emotional balance, everything that comes with it, you're not scrambling the time, like all of these benefits that come from it. So you can think about it from that loop, the cue, pain point, the routine, and then the reward. Also, there's a story, I don't remember exactly who this was, but there was an Olympic athlete that was interviewed and they asked him, how did he become so successful? And he was talking about going to the grocery store. That's why I thought this was relevant here. He said, look, if I go into the grocery store and I don't have a list, I don't have a plan, I'm just going to wander around. I'll probably buy a bunch of junk that I don't need. And I walk out spending all this money, this time, etc. But when I go in with a list, I know exactly what I'm buying. I don't buy other stuff. I'm in and out. It's quick, right? So that's the same thing here, is whether it is implementing meditation or the exercise routine or meal prep, it is, again, you want to start with the outcome. You've got to have clarity on what that looks like and then tie the emotional component into it. Well, why is that important? Okay. And then there's all those examples that we just covered. So anybody else want to jump on this or share any thoughts here?
Good morning, Keegan. It's Marlene.
Good morning.
I just wanted to throw something out there a little bit. I was by myself for 12 years and now it's Pete and I, but there is a factor that remained consistent, and that is that especially now with groceries being so much more expensive, I would look at the weekly ads, whether it's Publix, Winn-Dixie, Save-A-Lot, whatever grocery stores you shop at. And that would help me determine what I was going to buy for the upcoming week. So my week was kind of midweek instead of on the weekend. And on Fridays, Pete doesn't eat meat, so I know automatically it's going to be a seafood day. And it's just part of that structure of just the planning. And it doesn't matter if you're a single person or if you're with someone, it's just as important for the single person to not waste the food that they bought as much as it is for a family. So that's just a little option.
Love it. And that ties back into the routine portion, right? And finding what works for you. So that would be, you know, that could be an example of a kinesthetic because you're actually touching those articles, but then also the visual as well.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing, Marlene. All right, guys, we probably have time for one more. So if anybody has a habit that you want to include or stop, would love to hear from you now. We'll all collectively share and then we'll close out the meeting. So if anybody else wants to share before we wrap up. Chris, I'm gonna challenge you on this
Keegan,
one. Marlene, okay.
Keegan, yeah, one more. I'm gonna have to get a little bit raw and honest here.
Okay.
I am a very talkative person, very talkative. Just ask Pete. And I am really working on being less talkative and being more of a listener. And I have a feeling I'm probably not the only person sitting here going, oh, guess what? I need to work on my listening skills as well, because it doesn't matter if we're in business, if we're with family, friends, if we're out just meeting new people, whatever. That listening factor can really keep you out of trouble because it allows you to know who the person is, where they're at mentally, emotionally, etc. So that's something I have literally found myself putting my hand over my mouth and going, okay, I promise I'm going to stop and I'm going to let you talk. And then I let the other person talk. It isn't always easy because I really like to communicate. So now I'm going to stop.
So listening, would love to hear from the group. What do you guys think or feel on this, Bob?
I love that one too, because of course I talk all the time and I had to learn how not to talk and how to listen. Two techniques. One is when I'm in a group like this, even though I didn't do it today, I always try and be the last person to speak. And like Marlene said, I learn so much more about the room and what's going on, and then I'm able to say something with more impact because I've listened. The other thing, Marlene, when I'm with somebody, if I really want to practice this, I do use this. I use the pencil trick or whatever. We have a pencil, and whoever's holding the pencil is the one who talks, and the other person cannot say anything until they're given the pencil. So once I got the pencil, then I know that the other person is finished. And while I don't have the pencil, all I need to do is listen. I don't think about what to say next. I don't even think about what I want to say. I'm listening to the other person, and I don't speak until the other person hands me the pencil, which tells me they're done speaking. It's my turn, and now it's my turn to speak. So that really is a really good, has been a really good technique for me to learn and use with people who I feel comfortable doing that with.
Amazing. What kind of trigger is that? Kinesthetic, right? Tammy said touch. That's it. That's it.
Yes.
That's a trigger, right? I love
Awesome.
that. Love that pencil example. Thank you for sharing, Bob. Anybody else have any thoughts here?
I'll share something.
Okay.
Okay, so I think I find myself in the same position, and I think for me it's more of a coping mechanism for lack of confidence that I just start talking and don't shut up. And so I'm either super quiet and shy, or I just, spew at the mouth. And so when I find myself doing that, I try to be more self-aware. And I think to myself, okay, if I was this other person and listening to me, I would be like, God, shut up already. How does that person feel when, you're just talking and talking and talking? And for me, when I'm listening to someone else talk to me and they're invested in what I have to say, it feels a lot more authentic and meaningful. So I try to pull myself back and show that I have that care and concern to, I really want to hear what you have to say about this topic, or get to know you better as a person, instead of just me trying to sell myself or be liked or try to stand out. So I'm trying to learn those skills as well, but I think it's more just self-awareness and being conscious of how I'm acting, and am I actively listening, or am I just waiting to get my next comment out?
Beautifully said. Thank you so much for sharing, Carissa. Any other thoughts here from Marlene?
This might feel a little redundant, but going back to what Carissa just said, when we're talking with somebody else and they're sort of pulling all of the words out of us, it feels like really authentic engagement. And so it's something that I try to practice, like something I'll tell myself before I'm meeting with somebody new, whether it's business, personal, pleasure, anything, is I'll just keep telling myself infinite curiosity, infinite curiosity, infinite curiosity, because then it's not really about like, oh, well, when you said this, it reminded me of this and my life story and this thing that I have and my thing. It's more so you said that, and I didn't even know you had a dog. What kind of dog do you have? And so what are they saying that you can turn into a question to pull more out of this person and continue learning from them, whatever it may be. But infinite curiosity is like a cue, a mantra sort of that helps me a lot.
Love it.
So I would like to just jump on that if I could, because I
Go
love
for
the
it.
infinite curiosity. I also love the understanding that it is me not having self-confidence, that I have to keep the volume going, right? But both on those things, there's 3 levels of listening. The first one is listening to figure out what it is I'm going to say next. I'll tell you whatever I want to say, regardless of what you're saying. I'm only thinking about what I want to say next as you're talking. That's level 1. Level 2 is listening with infinite curiosity and saying, let me just listen to what they're saying. And when they're finished, then I'll respond to exactly what they said. And that will be more organic and more connecting. And then the third level is the holistic listening, not just listening to the words, but also the tone, the speed, the person's posture, everything. You're listening to everything about that person and responding to that. And maybe say things like, not that I hear you say this, but also you're saying it as if you're very anxious or you're feeling anxious right now because you're listening with holistic. And that really is very connecting. There's more being communicated than just the words. But you gotta get used to listening to the words first and then do the holistic. I love this discussion. Thank you, Maureen and Carissa
Amazing.
and everyone else. Yeah.
Great stuff, guys. And so my last little nugget on this is I would always lead with questions, right? That kind of touches on what everybody said. If you are asking questions, it shows you're interested and it gets that engagement and it prevents us, it keeps us talking, but in the direction of serving the other person. And so here's a really, really simple acronym that we used to use in the sales field. FROG, the question frog. Okay, what does that mean? F is for friends. You ask the person about their friends. Oh, when's the last time you hung out with your friends? What's the last activity that you did? R is recreation. What things do you like to do in your spare time when you're not working? What do you like to go and do? How do you use that time? O is occupation. So you can dive into what somebody does. You can learn all the dynamics of what and how they do. And then G is geography. And this can be used on a couple levels, right? How long have you lived here? Or where's the last place that you traveled? So whenever you feel like you're in a position where you need to listen more, it's really powerful to ask questions. And then again, you can use this question frog. So ask somebody about their friends, their recreation, their occupation, and then the geography part. Any last minute thoughts on this, on the listening habit? Andrea and then Tammy.
I find it really useful to be present. I think it was Miles was talking about curiosity. Infinite curiosity, I think was the term. Anyways, the ability to really be present with someone. So you're not thinking of how to engage them. You're not thinking of acronyms. All those things are good, by the way. Instead, you're being really present so that you're hearing the nuance in what they say and where that emotional tone is, so that you're responding to what means something to them. And in that way, people I find really open up and lean in and want to share with you because they feel heard, because you're really hearing them. Some people call it active listening. Active listening is what I would call a top layer to the kind of listening I'm talking about, because you are being active, but you're really being present and hearing what is being said in such a way that you respond to those emotional nuances in a way that mirrors those feelings. Does that make sense? Mirrors those feelings, those excitements for that person, and it makes that person feel heard, and they really engage with that. And what happens for me when I do that is that I actually really walk away with more learning, more fulfillment from that conversation. It doesn't become this onerous duty or this exercise. It's a conversation. So for what it's worth, I call it being present listening.
Love it. Love it. Thank you for sharing. Tammy?
I love all of these things that everyone has shared. I'm like, yes. A big piece that I've had to learn as a talker, and dealing with insecurities and often being told to shut up growing up, there's a defense that I have almost instantly when I think someone's attacking me or accusing me. Those are my favorites that I, go off. And I'm not hearing them anymore and that kind of thing. And so I've practiced that for quite some time, to the point of when somebody says something that hits a button, I, instead of talking to them, talk to me real quick, say, okay, so if this person loves me, which in most cases they do, sorry about that, or if they care about me as a person, I'll tell myself that this person loves me, they care about me as a person, they're not trying to attack me, and it settles me back down, right? My automatic system that's starting to react. No, they love me, especially if it's my husband. He's invested his whole life into me. Hello, he's not trying to hurt me. And so then that calms me down. And okay, so where am I coming from? And it brings me back to listening to him versus being responsive and hurtful. And I think that has really helped me in learning how to listen differently. And it's also really helped me when I've worked with clients to help them see they think it's the other person, but it's really them. And that's what I got for myself too. I think he's attacking me and it's like, whoa, wait, what's my interpretation of this right now? And I have to break it down. And sometimes I've even shared with him, hey, I have to stop you a sec because I'm going through something. So then I can hear you better. And that helps to change. So I don't know if that will help, but that really helped me in learning how to listen differently.
And that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing. I think that takes a heightened level of awareness, right? To be able to stop in those heightened emotional states. This isn't always applicable, but in active listening, something that Andrea said, notes are super powerful. If you're having a conversation with somebody, and again, not always applicable, but if somebody's sitting there taking notes on what you're saying, you can tell that they're invested. You can tell that they care. It's not, they're not all texting somebody else or distracted doing something, but they're there, they're present. Another really big one is mirror and matching. This comes from a sales psychology standpoint, but I'll give you a really quick example. There was a psychologist that had met this individual, and this guy was well-renowned. He was, famous, had a lot of money, accolades, whatever. He had gone to so many psychologists and none of them could understand him. And he was like, none of these people get me. They're just trying to give me a prescription or something to cure this. He goes and sits down with the one psychologist, and the first thing he says, he's like, I don't know if I can change any of this. I don't know if I have the tools. And the psychologist goes, yeah, I don't know if you do either. I can see why you're feeling that way. And the guy immediately goes, wow, this guy really gets me. And then they went on to work together and got tremendous results. So mirror and matching is a really powerful way to use your physical being in terms of showing somebody that you're present and you're listening. And the emotional interpretation that Tammy mentioned, that's just such a huge one, is that takes a lot of personal work and introspection and self-awareness. But you got to understand that we all have emotional interpretations based on a past event. And I can go down that rabbit hole, so I'm not going to. But great session, guys. Thank you all so much. I hope everybody took something from today. Loved the presence, loved everybody being here. I will send this recording out a little bit later today. It takes some time to upload. So if you guys need anything or have any questions, please reach out. But I hope you have an amazing Tuesday, and we'll talk soon. Bye, guys.